he dropped this joint because he didn't want to battle. He didn't want to beef with Drake, because when Drake was on stage and he said something about your friends and they turn their back on you and all this stuff, I thought, just my personal opinion, I thought he was talking about J. Cole. All right, man. Torture Talk After Hours. So this is part 2 of J. Cole is a Master Manipulator. Part 1 is on my main channel, Torture Talk. If you want to go see that, make sure you go over there. But this is part 2. I actually did that last Friday on a live, and I put the episode out too. It's pretty good. But this is part 2, and this is on Torture Talk After Hours. I didn't want to put both of them on the same one. So, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Yeah, so we're going to get right into this. This comes courtesy of Jalopy. You already know. And, yeah, let's see how this one goes. So, let's go.
This video is about to get very surgical, so stay with me, okay? A lot of people have been asking me, where's part 2? Where's part 2? If you didn't know, today is the 1-year anniversary of a very special day, okay? Today is the 1-year anniversary of when J. Cole went on stage in front of thousands and apologized to Kendrick Lamar, okay? Ironically, a year later at the same fest, he did 2 things that I knew he would do. 2 things that I knew he would do, 2 things that nobody's talking about, okay? And these 2 things validate the points that I made in part 1. Now, before we get to that, we also got to talk about a couple more lines in Port Antonio. And when I get into that part of this video, I'm going to break a whole lot of hearts, okay? A lot of J. Cole fans going to have their heart broken because there's another part of Port Antonio that nobody talks about. But
oh, man. Let's get it. Let's get it. I want to hear this. We're going to see how he tackles this one. Because J. Cole do have a lot of skeletons. Not even skeletons, but he has a lot of things that happened to him in the past that a lot of people are not talking about. So, let's see what he's talking about.
Before I get to that, did y'all know that J. Cole already did something just like this before? And he actually tried to use the same tactics in what he did before in Port Antonio. Yeah, some of y'all already know what I'm talking about. We're going to talk about Snow and a Bluff today. The diss track that J. Cole put out against NoName Gypsy. Okay? A lot of people don't talk about this song. But when I went and looked,
I remember this. And I had a lot to say about this. And let's see how he tackles this, because it's some things that I disagree with NoName Gypsy on this. It's some things I disagree with, and it's some things I agree with. So let's just see what he says.
Through the lyrics, I'm like, wait a minute. He's tried this formula already. Okay? And in both situations, his reputation was seen to be at stake. Now, if y'all don't remember, this was during a time where there was a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on in the community. And NoName Gypsy, who was pretty much a known activist who was doing work in the streets, using her platform, etc., made a tweet. Didn't even say J. Cole's name. Made a tweet stating there's a lot of rappers out there who talk a whole lot about what they're gonna, the communities and all that in their music, but you never see them participate in anything in the streets. Okay? J. Cole decided to respond to this by doing this. And what do you know?
Now, I will say that I believe that No Gypsy and J. Cole had an issue before. And that's why J. Cole thought she was talking about him, because they had an issue before. or something like that. It wasn't just she said that and then J. Cole jumped out the window. I believe that there was an issue there before all that, but let's keep it going.
Remember my main point of being that J. Cole pretends to be naive? That J. Cole, what he does is pretend to act like he has no idea what's going on. Well, look at the first 2 lines of this diss track. People be thinking I'm deep, intelligent, full of my college degree. My IQ is average. There's a young lady out there, she way smarter than me. Now, initially, people think this is his attempt of, being humble and being, no. This is the same exact thing he always does. Whenever the lights are on him, when it's time for criticism, he plays naive. He plays like he has no idea what's going on. And he pretends like he doesn't know what he's doing when he's trying to create a narrative through a verse. Okay? She mad at these capitalists, mad at these murder police. She mad at our ignorance, wear her heart on her sleeve. She mad at celebrities, and low-key I think that she talking about me. I wonder why you feel like she talking about you. Okay? Now I ain't no dummy to think I'm above criticism, so when I see something that's valid, I listen, but it's something about the queen tone that's bothering me. Okay? Now, he then goes, I'm not even gonna read all the lyrics. But he then goes on to break down this whole idea of the fact that NoName Gypsy more than likely grew up in an environment where her parents were able to give her this idea of what's going on in the communities and all this different stuff. And because of this, she believes that she can talk down on people who don't understand that.
Well, that's kind of a valid point, though. You got to understand, if I grew up in the suburbs and I am not keen to activist culture or whatever, and you grew up in a household with, I don't know, let's say Black Panther-ish people or someone who was of that ilk, right? Pro-black ilk. And me and you get into a conversation, 9 times out of 10, it's going to feel like you're talking down to me, especially if you're talking about black culture. So I understand what you're saying, but you got to take into consideration, like, if he is from the suburbs, or if J. Cole he didn't grow up like that, obviously he's going to feel like he's being talked down to. You know what I'm saying? So, but let's keep it going.
It sounds very good until you remember there's a reason why you weren't shown or taught these things. Because you didn't grow up in a community that would force you to recognize these things.
Then that validates his point right there. That validates his point. If he's saying that he feels like she's talking down to him, yeah, that's obviously not to say what she's saying is wrong, but that validates his point. If he's not from that, he feel like, I'll put it to you like this. It could be a better way to talk to somebody. Some of these activists, and I know a lot of them, trust me. I know a lot of them. I have family members that are like this. They do talk down to you. They do everything you say is wrong. They do. They're not saying that it's something that they're bad people, but that's just what they do. That's what they do. They have their ideology, and whatever you say ain't gonna matter. So I get it.
J. Cole grew up in a suburb and was raised by his German mother. Why would you be in a position to be taught these things? Now, instead of saying like, oh, I wasn't taught these things because I didn't grow up in that, he makes it seem like he's just one of those ignorant niggas who was in the streets too much, so they didn't really understand enough. Wasn't smart enough, so they didn't understand enough. No.
I didn't get that from that. I don't get that. I didn't get that he was made it seem like he was one of them niggas in the streets that didn't. I didn't get that from that. What I got was he's saying that basically he feels like she talks down to people that don't really know anything about certain things. That's what I got. I didn't get that he felt like he was this ignorant nigga from the streets and they didn't know nothing. I don't know about that one.
You weren't aware of these things because you didn't grow up in that environment. And you didn't have a black mother, which is totally fine. I'm not blaming him for that. But you didn't have the influence of what it is to be of somebody of black American descent in your household. That's why you weren't taught.
Well, I don't know how I feel about that because he's still a black American and his father is black. Now I don't know where his father's at, and I don't know if his father was in a home, but you're saying that he was raised by a German mom, and maybe his dad wasn't in the home. He didn't know his dad. I don't know. Maybe he said that in his music. I don't know. I'm just saying. But if he wasn't, then you have a valid point. But at the same time, that doesn't negate the black experience because J. Cole doesn't look white. J. Cole looks more black. So I'm sure that J. Cole experienced the black experience in America. I'm sure that's the case. You know what I'm saying? Throughout his whole career, he probably did. Throughout his whole life, he probably did. You know what I'm saying? So I would say that. I'm going to say he don't look like Logic. Logic looks more white. J. Cole doesn't look white. You know what I'm saying? So that's just the thing. But let's keep it going.
These things. Instead, he attempts to spin it and pretend that NoName Gypsy is arrogant and condescending. And he hides this message behind the humble idea of what is the point of preaching your message to people that already believe what you believe? Like, it's like he knows exactly what he's doing. The change is inevitable.
Well, that's a valid point too. What is the point of teaching messages to people who believe what you believe? Like, what he's basically saying there is instead of you talking down to people who don't know, you should be trying to tell them the right thing. That's basically what he's saying. Like, you're taking aim at somebody who don't really know or who's not really into that type of culture, but then you're talking to the same people that believe the same thing you believe. So it's basically saying like you're in an echo chamber and you're just talking to and y'all just conversing amongst each other. But for people who don't know, you don't know how to talk to them in a way where it don't sound condescending or talking down to. I'm taking it that way. That's how I feel like J. Cole was doing with her.
Therefore, we just got to learn everything as we go. I struggle with thoughts on a daily. Feel like a slave that somehow saved enough coins to buy his way out of slavery. Like, he's paying this idea of him being somebody who grew up in the projects around a bunch of, you know what I'm saying, in this environment. And because of that, he can't understand or participate in what NoName Gypsy is talking about.
I disagree with that. I don't think that that's what he's saying in that last part of his verse. I think he's basically saying like, and it goes back to what I said about the black experience. Just because J. Cole got a white mom, he's still a black American. You know what I'm saying? It's not like Drake. Drake's not a black American. It's totally different. They might have the same type of, background as far as their parents, but it's not the same as if you're a black American and mixed kid. You know what I'm saying? And J. Cole again doesn't look white. He looks black. So most likely he did experience the black experience in America. Now I'm sure he grew up with a bunch of niggas. So that don't mean anything. You saying he grew up in the suburbs? Yeah, okay, cool. I know a lot of niggas that grew up in the suburbs, but they still handle shit. So it's not. Trust me, I know. I know a lot of niggas who was from the suburbs who beat hood niggas up. Clearly, you know what I'm saying. So it ain't about that. You know what I'm saying. It ain't about that. But and just because you grew up in the suburbs doesn't take away from the black experience. Like, I know it also depends on what you would call a suburb. Because where I grew up at, I grew up in the projects. I grew up in the ghetto. But when I came to where I live at now, it was the suburbs, but it was hood niggas there. You know what I'm saying? So it really depends on how you look at it. So let's keep going.
It's the same exact method he used in Port Antonio, okay? Where there's a little bit of vulnerability, but not enough accountability. Well, maybe because deep down I know I ain't doing enough. You see what I'm saying? This is where he starts to paint himself as the victim. That's what this whole song is about. Painting himself as the victim.
Wait a minute. No, that doesn't mean that either. He's not painting himself as the victim, because he basically saying, like, she called him out, right? And he basically said all these things about it. And then he said at the end of the John, well, maybe I'm not doing enough. He didn't say maybe I'm not doing enough in that context of what you're saying, in my opinion. He said he kind of agrees with her and says, well, maybe I'm really not doing enough. Maybe I am not doing enough, because she basically was saying, like, these rappers don't be doing enough. And he basically said, like, well, okay, maybe I'm not doing enough. So that's how I took it.
Sounds like somebody else I know. Anyway, this whole song and this whole concept is no different than the exact same thing he did on Port Antonio. He dropped it as a surprise. He did it at the height of the criticism of people pointing it out to, hey, you are this or you are that. And he spins the narrative back on the people who, on NoName Gypsy. You see what I'm saying? And the crazy thing is, nobody talks about the fact when NoName Gypsy responded, she really pointed out these flaws. Okay? So that's how you know I'm not tripping. And based on the people who watched part one, y'all not tripping, because I never seen that many people in my comments agree with what I had to say. She says, I saw a demon on my shoulder is looking like patriarchy, like scrubbing blood off the ceiling and bleaching another carpet. How my house get haunted? Why toy in your body don't embody all the life she wanted? A baby this 19, and that's the little girl that had died, right? He then says one girl go missing, another one go missing. But niggas in the back quiet as a church mouse. Basement studio when duty calls to get the verse out. I guess the ego's hurt now. It's time to go to work. Wow, look at him go. He really thought to write about me when the world is in smokes? When it's people in trees? When George was begging for his mother saying he couldn't breathe? You thought to write about me? Nobody talks about this verse.
That verse is fire. I ain't gonna lie. That verse is, that was a great verse. I ain't gonna lie. I mean, what can you say? I think her rebuttal was crazy, but her rebuttal didn't really, well, at least from what I remember, because it could have, but I don't remember the whole verse. But it doesn't basically address the problem that J. Cole was saying. Like, it kind of like, it goes back to her tweet when she said that. It's like she was on attack mode, and even in the verse she was on attack mode. Like, you ain't, to me, she wasn't giving me anything, and this is the issue I think I had back then. She wasn't giving me anything that would actually say, okay, yeah, this is a teachable moment for her to actually show him. I think it was more of an aggressive moment, or, you know what I mean, than a teachable moment. And I think, and to J. Cole's point, I think that's the reason why he had an issue with it, probably because you're saying these things, but then you're not really out here trying to show people the way. You're talking to people that you talk to all the time about it, but when someone who doesn't know about it, you ain't really teaching them. You know what I'm saying? You giving them these, how would I say this? You're giving them your talking points of the patriarchy and all this stuff, which is fine. You could do that. But at the same time, I just feel like sometimes people don't fully want to engage with people. They want to just tell them their side. They don't want to actually sit them down and say, well, this is what I believe and what you believe. All right, well, I don't know if that's right. I don't feel like, they don't want to have a conversation. They already have their mind made up, and they just basically push for that. That's it. So I understand, but the verse is fire. I ain't gonna lie.
Nobody talks about this verse. She is calling out the hypocrisy. And don't get me wrong, everybody's a hypocrite. I'm not mad at that. But when you then take this and constantly try to spin it in your favor, as if you don't have a degree in communications and know exactly what you're talking about, it's time to.
But you can't do that though. You can't basically say that he don't know anything, but then say that he has a degree in communications and he should know these things. It's like, if J. Cole is basically saying he don't know and he not doing enough, or he basically said in the verse, it's because I got a degree doesn't mean I know these things. Like, and I don't know, I feel like you throwing that on him, like, oh, you supposed to know these things. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and then turn around and say that, well, you didn't really know because you grew up in the suburbs. You didn't know these things. Like, I don't know. I'm just saying, I just feel like her and him, I understand the criticism of it because what you're saying in its totality, he is a hypocrite and he does do stuff like this. He does backpedal, but I think in the context of them two arguing back and forth, I don't really see J. Cole that much wrong in that conversation. That has nothing to do with Jalape's assessment. I'm talking about the between J. Cole and this girl grapping.
That out. This is also around the time where a lot of people were poking at J. Cole for a cultural appropriation. Because if you remember in 2020, this is like the height of the social justice warriors, and J. Cole was a victim of that at the time. You see what I'm saying? A lot of people don't remember that. Okay? Little did I know all my reading would be a bother, because J. Cole had an issue with her reading. Is trans woman being murdered and this is all he can offer? This is all y'all receive? Distract.
And again, this is just, sometimes I believe a lot of these rappers, and it's nothing wrong with this if that's what you believe, but they use these things to virtue signal for whoever they want to virtue signal to and for. Like, what is trans women being murdered have to do with anything in this whole conversation? You get what I'm saying? Like, why do you need to bring it? This is between you and J. Cole, and you're interjecting stuff that has nothing to do with anything. You know what I'm saying? That's just how I feel. If you have an issue with J. Cole, then you should address your issue with J. Cole, but you're manipulating the situation to fit your narrative or whatever surrounds your narrative. That's what I didn't like about the verse. I thought the verse was phenomenal, but I felt like she was trying to piggyback off of things just to get him out there instead of just saying, J. Cole, I have an issue with you. This is the issue I have with you. This, that. But I felt like she was trying to pinpoint certain things to highlight certain things so people can look, oh, look at that, look at that, look at that. That's just how I felt. You know what I'm saying?
From the convo with organizers, they talking about abolishing police, and this the new world order. She broke it down to a T and clocked his shit, bruh. This is exactly what J. Cole be doing, but nobody pay attention. Okay? I just wanted to point that out to let y'all know this is a consistent thing with J. Cole, where he plays dumb and he punches down and tries to play this condescending role where it seems like he's lending you a helping hand, as if he knows what he's talking about. He did the same thing to Little Pump. All right? Now that we got that out the way, let's move forward to 7-minute drill, okay? One of the parts in this song that I really want to talk about is when he starts talking about the controversy with Kendrick Lamar, right? He said, I came up off of bars, not no controversy. That's very interesting. Because from what I remember, J. Cole's career was very controversial. It's always been controversial. As a matter of fact,
he's 100% right about that. I don't know why J. Cole would say that. And I said that before. Like, what you mean there's no controversy? Like, come on, dog. Really? You? Please. You had a lot of controversy.
It's so controversial. If you go on Google right now, after you're done watching this video, you will see there are many articles talking about J. Cole and his controversy. Okay? But this is, once again, an attempt of J. Cole trying to rewrite history at the turn of a new decade, understanding that the new audience wasn't there to experience when he came up. I'm telling you, bro, he is a much more crafty manipulator than y'all think he is. Okay? And I even pulled up an article that came out the day he dropped 7-Minute Drill, because people were like, wait a minute, you calling out Kendrick for controversy, but your career is full of controversy. And a lot of the controversy sometimes doesn't have much to do with just calling people out or diss tracks. It's more about the wild things you be saying in your music. Lyricism versus misogyny, social activism criticism, colorism controversies, allegations of insensitivity, which is not a big deal to me, cultural appropriation debates. We never talk about the fact that J. Cole and Drake are kind of similar in the aspect of being white passing rappers, right? Who use their ability to maneuver in both arenas to their power. And no,
I disagree with that. I think Drake is more in that realm. I don't think J. Cole. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't know J. Cole is mixed. I know some people right now who don't know J. Cole has a white mom. A lot of people don't know. A lot of people.
Nobody talks about this stuff. And it's because J. Cole has done an amazing job at hiding behind this humble, I have no idea for possessions, minimalist perspective that he's given his audience, that a lot of people have bought into. Okay? And let's read this. While J. Cole continues to captivate audience with his thought-provoking lyrics and captivating performances, controversies remain an integral part of his journey. As his career unfolds, it's evident that his impact extends beyond the realm of music, prompting important conversations about art, activism, and social responsibility. Love or criticize him, J. Cole's influence on the cultural landscape is undeniable, ensuring that his legacy will endure amidst the controversies that surround him. Okay? J. Cole has always been controversial, and I could break down a whole bunch of the controversies in his career, but that's not the meat and potatoes of this video, so we're not going to do that. Okay? And now we get into the part that's going to break a whole lot of hearts. Okay? What a lot of people don't remember, because they were distracted by the Super Bowl performance, they were distracted by Lil Wayne crying about not being on the Super Bowl, and Young Money in Collection attempting to spin the narrative against Kendrick Lamar.
I remember that. Definitely was crying, and they definitely was trying to spin a narrative against Kendrick.
They forgot something very crucial. Okay? Let's go down to a certain lyric first. To remind y'all, J. Cole never mentions Kendrick by name. And what you got to remember is Kendrick is is assuming that J. Cole isn't aware that Drake is manipulating him, putting him out in the field first while he creates his game plan, and they can then team up and take on Kendrick Lamar, because it was supposed to be a 2-on-1. And that's why Drake was so mad that J. Cole backed out, right?
That's a fact. That's 100% facts. It was supposed to be a 2-on-1, and Kendrick did feel. I did feel like Kendrick did feel like J. Cole was being manipulated by Drake, and it kind of looked that way too.
He goes on to only mention Drake by name and tell him, "You'll always be my guy," okay? And tapping back into your opinion. Don't worry about the narratives. Tap back into your pen, bro. That rap ain't about beefing. It's about boom, boom, boom. Right? But what if I told you J. Cole dropped this song to avoid a rap beef with Drake? I bet y'all don't remember.
I said that. I said that. This is 100% facts. He's spitting facts. I said that. I literally said that. I said that. He dropped this joint because he didn't want to battle. He didn't want to beef with Drake, because when Drake was on stage and he said something about your friends and they turn their back on you and all this stuff, I thought, just my personal opinion, I thought he was talking about J. Cole, because that whole song that he did with Daylight, I thought he was talking about J. Cole. And then I said, okay, he did Puerto Antonio and he apologized to Drake. I said, yeah, that's who Drake was talking about in that when he was on stage.
Right before Puerto Antonio came out, Drake was applying pressure on J. Cole. And even there was podcasts going on. You know what? I'm not even going to say that. But I have a distinct memory of Mal even mentioned, Mal from, what's that show? You know what I'm talking about. Mal even mentioning that Drake might be gearing up to go at J. Cole. That's what he was insinuating. And what backs this up is the many different posts that Drake was posting to make fun of J. Cole. A lot of people forgot that Drake was making fun of J. Cole. You don't believe me? Here you go.
I remember this off of the 100 Gigs. He's absolutely right. He's right.
Drake on his backup account, Plot Twist, was sharing memes. I don't know if y'all remember when J. Cole went through that whole year span of people just making fun of him nonstop because they thought he was corny, because they thought it was if you was there, you remember. This is one of the memes from that time, okay? It says, remember when J. Cole got his phone stolen out of his pocket by a fan and they called Jay-Z from it, but he wasn't answering. So they called from their own phone and he picked up. Basically insinuating Jay-Z ignored J. Cole's phone call, but when Jay-Z got a random phone number in his phone, he answered it. Okay?
I definitely remember it. Drake put that out, and I said, damn. I remember that. That's crazy.
Why would Drake share this? Because he was making fun of J. Cole. Just like he made fun of J. Cole of Family Matters. You know who didn't make fun of J. Cole? Kendrick Lamar. So why would J. Cole then get on Port Antonio and big up Drake? Initially, you believe, it's because he's trying to be on Drake's side. He's taking sides with Drake. He's trying to play both sides. I believe he did this to avoid a battle. Because in reality, J. Cole fears confrontation. Just like Drake fears confrontation, but the difference is,
he taking the words right out of my mouth. Yo, I swear I said this. I said this on one of my episodes. J. Cole does not like confrontation. That's why he apologized. I'm telling you, bro. This is crazy.
Drake can fear confrontation and still get into confrontation because he has a lot of powerful sources to back him up with the bots, the propaganda, etc. So even though he fears confrontation too, it doesn't matter because he's used to using the industry and the powers that be to give him the upper leg on anybody, right?
I don't know about that. I don't think Drake fears confrontation. I think Drake loves confrontation. I think Drake fears the outcome of confrontation, being confrontational. But I think that Drake loves confrontation. I think he loves to be in the middle of shit. I do.
J. Cole doesn't have this power. So J. Cole is fearful of confrontation. You want even more proof? Besides the apology to Kendrick Lamar and the ignoring the fact that Drake was antagonizing him. Okay? Guess who else has been going at J. Cole recently? Kanye West. And what did he decide to do in his recent Dream Fest festival? Let's take a look. He decides to show love to Ye at the concert. The same.
This is good. I love this. Yo, this is crazy.
Guy who dissed Kanye West when Kanye was in a straitjacket and he couldn't say nothing. But now that Kanye's outside and he's on Twitter going on rants and, you know, Kanye's saying some crazy shit, whatever. But the fact is, Kanye is still able to spin a narrative on somebody who isn't as powerful as a Kendrick Lamar. Of course, it won't work against Kendrick because Kendrick at this moment is the most powerful in the game, right? But J. Cole don't want no issues with nobody. And once again, when the heat is starting to catch up on him and Kanye West continuously going to J. Cole, calling him a false idol, calling all these different things, here he goes showing love, right? Which is interesting to me because how you diss a dude while he's in a mental facility, but now you ready to give him his flowers all of a sudden now that he dissing you, okay? The last thing that nobody's paying attention to, okay? Notice.
Yeah, and Freddie Gibbs actually dissed him too. I don't know why he didn't say anything about that. But that would actually been a great battle. I don't know why J. Cole didn't take that battle. But again, because he don't like confrontation.
Drake loses the battle, he goes to the Australian tour and starts this whole like pity sympathy tour, right? Where he's got bullet holes in his shirt, he's all sad and all this different stuff, right? I got an album coming out for you guys where I'm gonna talk about what's really going on and all this different stuff. J. Cole, ever since the rap beef, been playing into nostalgia very much. Have you noticed that? Playing super heavily into nostalgia to the point where he's giving this whole idea and painting everything as a farewell tour. J. Cole is currently on a farewell tour. Just like when Kobe was leaving the league and Kobe, you know what I'm saying, people knew this was his last time. J. Cole is creating the same idea. But the reason why he's doing this is because that's the only way he can get people, or at least his personal fan base, to stick with him during this final stretch of his career. He did the same thing last night, where the whole entire show, for a good amount of the show, from a lot of the clips that I've seen, he's playing on nostalgia. He's playing on playing this and going back to his old days, when in the 7-minute drill song he was talking about just now hitting his prime. If you just now hitting your prime, why are you going on a farewell tour? Why are you insinuating that you are about to retire? Because this is the only way he can spin the narrative back in his favor. It's no different than what Drake is doing. No different than what Drake is doing. Okay? And what people don't understand is Drake and J. Cole are a lot more similar than people give them credit for. And I would break that down, but that would take a whole nother video that, you know what? I'm not 100% sure invested to know if I really want to do that video, but I just might. If y'all let me know, if you want that video, I will break it down. It's alarming how similar Drake and J. Cole actually are. The only difference is J. Cole was able to at least grow up in America. So he has a better understanding of certain things that a Canadian would not. That's the only difference. And it sounds crazy until I make the video and it really gets surgical. Then you're going to really see, oh, wait a minute. This is crazy. Okay? But you got to pay attention to the fact that J. Cole is insinuating the fact that he's on a farewell tour. Okay? And this is the only way for him to spin everything in his favor. You see what I'm saying? There's a whole lot of crafty master manipulation going on here. And the reason why people don't get on Drake as much, J. Cole as much as they get on Drake about it, is because J. Cole is better at it. Okay? Drake can...
I will admit that J. Cole definitely is a better manipulator than Drake. He's definitely that. 100%. He never lied about that.
Fool people who have no idea about the culture, who have no idea what's going on. What J. Cole has done is he's able to trick people in a way with his image. The image that he picked up, by the way, after To Pimp a Butterfly came out. But that's a whole different conversation. You see what I'm saying? But like I said, bruh, this guy is extremely crafty in what he's doing. You see what I'm saying? And it basically summarized everything we talking about. I got my notes here. Okay? We broke down Snow in the Bluff. An attempt to show you that J. Cole has already done this, and this is a pattern of his. Okay? Also, we broke down No Gypsy's response, pointing out everything that I'm saying, but she wasn't famous enough for her voice to really get out there and for people to take it seriously. Okay? Then we get into the fact that he's fearful of confrontation, which is validated by him apologizing to Kendrick Lamar, for him dropping Port Antonio to slow down the Drake becoming angry and probably about to send shots at him, right? And who knows what Drake knows about J. Cole, right? And showing love to Kanye all of a sudden, even though you used to diss him. And now that he's applying heat on you, you showing love to Kanye to get him off your back. Okay? Then we look into Port Antonio or we look into the Dream Fest, and even the big show he did before that, I think it was like the Dreamville Memorial Show or something like that. It was something like that. And Memorial Show or something like that. And he was doing a whole bunch of nostalgia, etc. during that stuff too. You see what I'm saying? It's a lot of mastery and manipulation going on here, bro. You gotta pay attention. Okay? I might make a part 3 depending on how the future turns out, because I believe J. Cole is going to continue to do this. He has the opportunity, though, just like Drake had the opportunity, to let go of the things that are holding him to this image he's trying to portray to y'all, okay? And be himself authentically, okay? I think he actually has more of a chance to do that than Drake. And if y'all remember when I said about the Age of Aquarius, if J. Cole does do that, which he has the opportunity with the Fall Off album, he will see great results from it. And I think he will get back into the graces of the hip hop culture. Because
He's absolutely right about that. Definitely think that J. Cole can get back into the good graces of the hip hop community if he was to let a lot of stuff go. Yeah. Man, I tell you. It's a pretty good episode, man. Jalopy, you did your thing, man. Appreciate you, boy. You know what I'm saying? I had to give you some pushback on some things, but we ain't gonna always agree on everything. So y'all have yourself a good one, man. I'll see y'all. I'm about to take it down. Peace. Bye.